Everybody dreams every night. Learning to remember our night dreams helps us to be more aware also in the daytime. It's a superpower that's hidden in plain sight. We put on all these layers, and dreams cut through that, and they get us right back to our true self.
Is there a way to either induce the memories? Because I think everybody is dreaming. I just think it's that people don't always remember them.
Dream recall is very, very simple. We have more than one kind of dream. So, from the lineage that I teach, we have 7 kinds of dreams.
Ooh.
And the first kind of dream is a nightmare. And a nightmare is
My guest today is Bonnie Buckner, who is a dream expert. What if you had your own personal playbook that helped you interpret your dreams and then use them to your benefit to help you change things in your life? Well, today, that is what Bonnie is going to help us understand how to do. So, Bonnie, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I am so happy to talk to you because you are the very first person who I've interviewed who is specifically an expert in dreams. And I think that dreams are a gateway to helping us understand things that are going on in our lives. But for the people who are tuning in, tell everybody why they would want to stay and listen to this conversation. What do you think they're going to get out of it?
Well, dreams are a pathway into the self, and I mean the true self, because we put on all these layers that we've picked up in society, in family, in all the different challenges that we've lived through. We make our own layers, and dreams cut through that, and they get us right back to our true self.
I think that is amazing. And there are people, though, who are probably watching who maybe are curious about this who don't dream. Is there a way to either induce the memories? Because I think everybody is dreaming. I just think it's that people don't always remember them. Would you agree with that statement?
Everybody dreams every night, and we also dream during the daytime. From a neurological basis, everyone dreams every night, and dream recall is very, very simple. And I'll give some tips after I say this about how to do that. But from a neurological basis, dreaming comes from the default network of neurological our processing, and so in those moments in our daytime when we mind wander or we daydream, we're using that part of our brain's processing system. It's the same part that gets activated when we're dreaming at night. There's a few little differences, but it's also active dreaming.
So
So
during the day, we're having active dreaming. Is that point like where you're kind of staring off into space and you have what they call a daydream? Oh, that person's daydreaming. Is that what you mean?
yeah, I'll give an even better example. You know,
Okay.
when you're in the shower and you're not thinking of anything, and suddenly you have like the great idea, or, oh, wait, I need to,
Call those downloads. Yes.
yeah, that's when we've slipped over to that processing system. The other processing system is our executive network that's focused on goals. It's the to-do list. It's the, is my mic on? Can people hear me? I'm going to be speaking about something. The other, where our dreaming comes from, is our imaginative space. It's also a place of social cognition where we sort of imagine how the other person might have felt about things that we had said, or how to move a conversation differently. So we move back and forth between these two parts of ourselves, and learning to remember our night dreams helps us to be more aware also in the daytime when we're using that, which is really, that's part of why I call my book The Secret Mind, because it's a superpower that's hidden in plain sight.
Dreams are a superpower that's hidden in plain sight.
Yeah,
Why?
because that part of ourself is the part of ourself that's able to take more perspectives and imagine beyond the place we're in right now. The executive network builds on, this is what I've known before. I ate that sandwich yesterday. It was good. I'll eat it again today. And dreaming pulls us way out and says, chicken pot pie, something totally different. And that's how we become innovative.
Wow. And so if we could harness the power of our dreams, how would our lives be different?
Well, we make these little transformations. A lot of people are looking for the big transformation, and that does happen. I've had people really make major changes in their lives, going to changing careers or starting a family or, really big lifestyle shifts, moving to a new location, things like this. But also, the really big things that help shift our life is when we learn to be very aware that maybe I'm looking at my life from one lens, one perspective, or I'm telling the same story over and over again. And I learn that there's another story I can tell. And part of how our dreams teach us about this is our dreams have all these different objects and scenarios and people in them, and they're all representing different perspectives. When we start to understand that, we enlarge ourselves. And so long time conflicts, for example, can become resolved because we start to see, oh, wait, I've been really hanging on to an old story, but there's another story I can tell, or there's something deeper beneath that. So dreaming helps us to wake up literally to some of these things.
Okay. Well, I would imagine that you had something in your life happen that made you decide to study dreams. Can you share what that was?
Yeah, when I was a child, I had nightmares constantly. And one day I was sitting on our front steps and I was thinking that through, and I was thinking, I don't want to have these nightmares anymore. And I was thinking, can I just not sleep? And I was just kind of going through a mental process. And suddenly it kind of hit me, oh, this is why I'm on the planet. I need to learn how to deal with my own nightmares, and I'm going to teach other people to do the same. And I just kind of thought it, got it, and then it just kind of sat there. And throughout my childhood, I would talk about dreams with especially my father and my grandmother. They were big dreamers. They taught me a lot about dreaming. And then I, would talk about it with other people, and a librarian in the 8th grade who showed me a couple of books. And just as life kind of went on, I knew I was looking for someone who could really help me understand dreams, even though I was doing, different kinds of careers and things like that. And then I finally did meet the person who I consider my dream teacher. And from there, I began to move into doing this full time.
That's incredible. In 8th grade, I had to do a thesis on an something that we had to prove it to either be true or untrue. And there
Mm.
were a list of things, and one of the things on the list was lucid dreaming. And so in 8th grade, I picked that, I studied it, and then I had to write this paper about whether proving lucid dreaming exists or it doesn't. And of course, it does. But even though I've been aware of it since I was 13 or so, I have really never been able to achieve a lucid dream. So, how common is it for people to learn how to wake up during their dreams and understand that they're actually dreaming and change that? So, for example, that nightmare that you were having, to be the victim running around in the dream and then to realize, oh, wait a minute, I'm dreaming, and actually, take out your, magic wand and do whatever you want in that dream because you understand it's a dream.
Well, there's another way that you can do that, and that's part of what I teach, which is doing it when you're awake. So it's going back to look at the dream and saying, oh, I was running away from something, but now I can turn around and I can face something. And then doing a waking dream exercise to go back into the dream and do it in that moment. Lucid dreaming, waking up to that and making that transformation in a dream is a really great thing to do. And you've really just hit on something about lucid dreaming that escapes many people. A lot of people, lucid dreaming is kind of the rock star of the dreaming world these days. Everybody wants to have a lucid dream. But a lot of those people don't realize the point of being lucid in a dream is to transform something or to learn something. It's not just to be like, yes, I had this lucid dream. Although there is a use for that. And the use for that is that big sense of being capable. Because most lucid dreams occur around some kind of then I was diving in water and I found I could breathe underwater, or suddenly I was flying. There's some kind of extraordinary thing that happens. And that is generally followed by a sense of larger capability. And when we have a dream of feeling extra capable, because we felt it physically, our body considers that real. So we wake up and our body has reorganized itself around the idea that I'm more capable than I knew myself to be. So we evolve.
Wow, I never thought about it from that perspective, but that makes so much sense.
Mm.
We talk a little bit about recurring dreams because I know there are probably a lot of people who are watching. So I feel like this for me, and I'll just use this as an example, and then I would love for you to share an example of something that you hear that comes up a lot, or maybe something significant that people can relate to. I feel like when I'm in stressful situations, I will have a dream, and it's always the same type of dream where I'm trying to enter in a phone number. Sometimes it's a rotary dial, and I keep misdialing and have to hang up. It can be just a push button phone, but I think it was tied to this credit card that I had in college where you had to dial an 800 number, then the phone number, and then like 12 digits as your code. And so if you messed one up, you had to start all over again. And I'm sure it originates from that because you'd only have so much time on your break and you're trying to do this call. But I've had this dream reoccur over time. Will you explain, if you understand it, why somebody would have a dream similar to that under stressful situations?
Yeah. So, first of all, we have more than one kind of dream. So, from the lineage that I teach, we have 7 kinds of dreams.
Ooh.
And the first kind of dream is a nightmare. And a nightmare is really a friendly messenger because it's telling us that we have some kind of emotional or mental tangle and we have to deal with it right then. So, fear, anxiety, these kinds of things. If we don't deal with it, then we have a recurrent nightmare. And so that repeats because our body is constantly trying to help us to see that we've fallen out of balance and that we have the possibility to get back into balance. So if I think about that experience of needing to make something come to completion and the stress of if I make an error, I have to go back and start all over again, happening when I'm in a time of a stressful situation, is mirroring that back to me. Very frequently, we're in stressful situations and we don't realize it because we've become so accustomed to that kind of stressful situation. So when we have a kind of dream such as that, and especially if it's a recurring dream, we can understand I've fallen back into an old pattern of being out of balance with the pressures happening in my life. And then we can make the shifts that we need to make to get back into balance.
Wow. Okay. Can you give us an example of something that comes up that seems to be like a common human dream that people have that's related to stress like that?
Yes, there's many. There's I'm standing naked in a classroom in front of everybody. I don't know what the assignment is. I wasn't prepared for it. I'm not ready. That's a very common dream. Another very common dream is I'm in front of a toilet that's about to overflow. All of these
Mm.
are very simple dreams, and they're showing us in very simple ways what the energies of our bodies are doing and how they're blocked. And so, very simply, they can be shifted. With the toilet dream, the very simple shift is to flush it.
Like to become lucid in the dream or during the daytime when you're thinking about it, you think about it and you think about flushing it because you couldn't do that in your dream?
Yeah, you don't think about flushing it. You close your eyes, you imagine you're back in the dream, and you flush it.
Wow. And then what does that do? Does that resolve that dream and they don't have it anymore?
Yeah, try it. Next time you have that that credit card number dream, go back into the dream with your awaking lucidity because you're awake and make the numbers go through.
Wow, I love that. What else? What else do we need to know about dreams that we're not thinking about them the right way?
Well, dreams are simple and we complicate things. And it's kind of like the adult that is talking to a kid about very, very deep psychological things when the kid is just like, my sister stole my crayon. Like, we adultize, and by doing so, we miss the point. Our bodies understand homeostasis, they understand balance, and they put all kinds of mechanisms in place to bring us back to balance when we're out of balance. If we're too hot, we sweat. So, likewise, if emotionally we're out of balance, we get a dream that says, hey, you're out of balance. So let's fix it. But then we go into these long thoughts about the why and it came from my childhood, and then we analyze our childhood for 20 years, and we don't need to. We just have to flush the toilet or, make the card numbers go through. It's very simple.
Okay. Wow. This is definitely a different perspective because you're right. I feel like people are aware of Freud and dreams and analysis, and we have made it very complicated because I was sharing with you before the interview in the 90s, I had a book and it was like
Mm.
7,000 dreams interpreted. And you'd look up a snake or if you were losing your teeth or whatever it was in your dream, and it would tell you it means all of this, but there was a lot of complexity with it.
Well, and the challenge with a dream dictionary like that, as we were talking before, is it wasn't that useful because it's too generic. And images are a product of our own self, they're a product of our own experiencing. So a snake for you is not going to be the same snake as for me. And the snake in a dream today, in the context of the dream of that night, is not going to be the same as a snake in a different context. If you even think about snakes, we could talk for the rest of this podcast about snakes. On the one hand, snakes are scary and they slither and you can't really get a hold of them and they feel very anxious. On the other hand, snakes are amazing dreaming creatures because they're able to shed their skin and be totally new and transform something. So a snake is much more than just a snake. And if I try and fix that and make it like a symbol and stick it in a dream dictionary, then I've lost it. I've lost the movement of it and how it's speaking to me and dialoguing to me in a very specific context.
Oh, wow. That makes a lot of sense. So, are there times when dreams are more than dreams? And the reason I'm asking this is because this channel is about a lot of times I'm interviewing people who've had near death experiences. I'm having interviewing people who are intuitive or have lost loved ones, and they'll have a dream where they've described a loved one looking more real than they did in this life, looking beautiful, giving them a very simple message like, I'm okay. And then they wake up and it didn't feel like a dream. It feels like a visitation. Do you have clients who have talked to you about those types of dreams? And do you know anything about them?
Yeah, visitation dreams are actually very common. And pretty much every podcast I'm on and every talk I give and every time I'm in front of a group of people, they ask me about visitation dreams because they've had them. And, you know, it's a visitation dream. There's nothing to break open there. It's an experience that I've only ever heard people say, I felt so relieved after. I felt so comforted. I was so grateful for that. So be grateful. Don't unpack it. Just let it be, you know?
That is wonderful advice. So, do we know scientifically yet why we dream? Is it known? Understood?
Why, as in the neurological mechanism, or
Yeah,
why,
why
as in,
what is the human reason that do we know that we actually have dreams at night?
well, there are mechanisms that we know quite well of what happens. You know, the executive network I was talking about earlier is taken offline, like literally taken offline. So that executive network is not only about goal making and lists, it's the part of ourself that criticizes, judges, shuts down ideas. So the inner critic is put to bed, and the inner lively self lights up and becomes incredibly active. And then, you know, there are other biological mechanisms that keep, you know, us still so that we don't just jump up and run down the hallway, you know, chasing after something in our dream. So the physiological mechanisms of dreaming are pretty well documented at this point and known. Why we dream, you know, are you asking me from a scientific point of view? Are you asking me from this ancient lineage that I teach point of view? It depends on the scientist you ask. I personally have found in my research that there are many things that the ancient lineage knows that is very far ahead of today's neuroscience. Neuroscience hasn't gotten there yet, in part because neuroscience is very microscopic and is wanting a one-to-one correspondence where the ancient lineage of dreaming understands the mind-body system and so much more. But at the same time, there are certain scientists who are talking in this space right now about dream research, about being part of the body's self-organizing system. I think he's at Harvard, is talking about that. It's our way to have these bigger experiences, and then for ourselves to organize around that and to be a more evolved person in the next day than we were when we went to sleep that night.
So I've had periods of time in my life when I've dreamt a lot and I've had very, very deep, profoundly meaningful dreams I've written down in journals. And then I've had periods of time where I wake up every morning and I don't remember any dreams. One of the things that I've noticed though is that if I get a little bit more sleep, so for example, if I can get 7 hours of sleep, I wake up remembering a dream or remembering at least that I dreamt. So, can you tell us the link, if you know of any, between the length of time that you're sleeping and our dreams?
Well, I can talk about that in many different ways because if we want to dream, we need to sleep. So our bodies
Which,
have
of
to
course, makes
sleep.
sense.
Our bodies have to sleep. And if we're getting less than 7 hours a night, our body is in a deficit. So the longer we're able to sleep in that sense, you know, our body rejuvenates and we're a little bit more aware as we're waking up of what we're dreaming. We're still dreaming. It's just if I'm super exhausted, you've heard like I hit the pillow hard. So when we're sleeping so intensely like that, we're not likely to wake up and still kind of be in that dreamy state and hang on to the dream. But whether we sleep 2 hours or we sleep 7 hours, we're still going to have a dream.
Okay. So, then for people who want to remember their dreams, what do you recommend they do?
Well, the most important thing is to get a journal and put it by your bed with a pen. It's the same thing. If I want to dream, I have to sleep. If I want to remember something, it's better to write it down. So get a journal by the bed, write down the day's date and maybe an intention sentence like tonight I will have a clear dream and remember. And then when we wake up, write it down and write it down immediately. Don't get up and, check the phone or go make coffee because then you're out. You're out of that space.
Why do we forget our dreams so quickly?
Because when we are dreaming, we're using one part of our neurological processing system. And then when we start doing activity things like checking our phones or making coffee, we've shifted over to a different neurological processing system.
So, how can we then harness these dreams that we're having more often because we are getting sleep? We're putting our journal next to our bed so that we can write them down and remember them. Now, how do we harness them to use them so that they make our lives better?
So the first thing is just get curious about the things we write down. And I can't emphasize that enough. There are many people who just very quickly reject, oh, that didn't make sense, and maybe don't even write it down. Write it down. And then maybe come back to it at the end of the day and reread it and see what parts are resonating. What part, if I'm thinking about it in terms of speaking to me an image, might have some kind of correspondence with my daytime. For example, we all talk about being rooted. That's a very easy concept. We use things like, I'm not grounded right now. I need to just root down. We understand what that means. Those are images. So if I see in my dream a deeply rooted tree, then I start to think in those terms of what's the embodied feeling and sensation of deeply rooted. So let the images speak back to you and think about how that affects or applies to waking time. Is it showing me I have a need to deeply root down right now? Is it showing me that I am and therefore things are opening out for me? Just that curious exploration.
So, for people who are having these dreams and then they're writing them down and then they're becoming curious and they're becoming more in touch with them, is there another methodology for them to use? Because I know you have your book. So, tell me a little bit about how you wrote your book and how that's a tool to help people with their dream interpretation.
So I wrote this book really taking people from A to Z. So it starts with how to develop a dreaming practice. And then it goes into how to understand images, how we make images, working with dream material. There's the different kinds of dreams, how that applies, what that means, the different levels of dreams. So I take people all the way, starting very simple and then building upon that as we go.
So, after they've gotten a little bit better, how would people expect to have this manifest as change in their lives?
So, one of the things that's important is to make that waking time correspondence. So, we talked about the dream that you offered earlier. And if I'm, running in this pressured space, you talked about how in waking time, the thing that makes you think of is when you had a very short amount of time to input those numbers. So, if I'm being squeezed in my daytime and I'm feeling that kind of pressure, but I'm not seeing that for myself. Maybe it's a thing that, because it's a recurring dream, that I do in a repetitive way. Having that dream and showing me that allows me a moment to pause, to work on myself, to move away from that pressure, to enlarge that space a little bit. Because if we're moving in this pressured way, we're not operating in our most creative capacity.
So, you mentioned that there are 7 different types of dreams, and I think you said nightmares, or one of them. Can you share the other types of dreams?
Yeah, so there's nightmares, there's the recurring nightmare. If we still aren't paying attention to that, we start to get busy dreams. And then there's a thing called a clear dream, and a clear dream shows us where we're blocked and how to get over that block and the potential of where we can go. And it's often a potential that's in me that I've sort of hidden. I can't see it because I'm so focused on the block, or I'm not using it because I'm so focused on the block. So with those kinds of dreams, it's also, again, taking that potential and bringing it forward and putting that into my life and exercising that in my life. And then after that, you have great dreams and dreams of light
What is
and
a
dreams
great
of
dream?
union. Well, it's a very brilliant, big experience. Sometimes they have a message, but it's a resolved, complete experience. There's no
Can
conflict.
can you give an example of one?
Sure. Um, the example is a dream that I've had of flying across a vast ocean at night and going very fast, and then looking up and in the night sky seeing this great plumes of like star clouds, like you'd see from like the Hubble telescope, bright jewel colors, and then they formed the shape of lions. And I knew what those lions were and where they were, and so it was a message for me that I understood in my life.
So have you seen an evolution as you've worked with people? So somebody comes to you and they begin this journey and maybe they're not remembering their dreams or they're only having some reoccurring dreams and then they work with you for a while. What do you see as a transformation happening to them over time? Like, are dreams something that evolve? I guess I would ask.
We evolve, and we're the ones who make the dreams. So our dreams do evolve. Um, the person who comes to me who hasn't started remembering their dreams begins to remember their dreams. And sometimes those dreams are sketchy at first, like it's a little bit like an image over here and then this, and then they become more elaborate. Other times people start working with me and they have very, very busy dreams, and those become more clear and concise, simple. So as we're working with our own self, we're evolving, and our dreams are mirroring that back to us.
Are dreams different for people in different countries with different backgrounds? Or do you think that dreams are like more universal?
Well, dreaming is a universal language. That language, remember, it goes back to experience. So, um, I've worked with someone from the Ukraine, and they had a czar show up and feature prominently in one of their dreams, and very, very great. I grew up in Texas. I may have a cowboy feature in one of my dreams. And so our very subjective, very specific experiences show up in our dreams because we understand them, and they're talking to us. I can still dream about the czar, and the person in the Ukraine can still dream about a cowboy. It's going to mean something different because it's going to be kind of surprising.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. What are some myths that we have about dreaming that you would love to dispel?
Well, the big one that we've been talking about all this talk is people who think I don't dream. We all dream, and we can all learn to remember our dreams and use our dreams, and that's a big one. You know, dreaming is a way of inner reflecting and looking inside of ourselves, and we don't give ourselves much time to do that in our very busy lives. And the person who begins to look inside themselves begins to see that there's so many potentials there that are just waiting to be discovered and bring forward. So for me, it's such a treasure trove. We're so much more than we know ourselves to be. And so why not remember our dreams? Why not get in there and get curious about it?
Yeah, that's amazing. You're definitely making me want to do a dream journal again because I have in the past had super profound dreams that I wrote down. One time I had one in a journal, and then I had a memory of that dream several years later, and I knew it was significant. I spent 2 hours looking for this notebook because I had moved, and when I found it and read it, it actually caused me to have an entire epiphany about a situation that I was in right now, and I made a massive life change based on a dream that had spoken to me from years before.
Yeah, great.
I know how powerful they are. That's why I really wanted to talk to you because I knew if more people understood how they could harvest their dreams, they could use them in a way to make changes that benefited them in some way.
Yeah, and the thing is, so I run an institute for dreaming. It's the International Institute for Dreaming and Imagery, and we train people. We offer online classes, and there's a lot of practitioners who are teaching this right now. And one of the programs that we have is for young dreamers, and one of the assignments we give our young dreamers is to go back home and ask a caretaker or parent, or grandparent, whoever they're living with, have you ever had a significant dream and maybe one that made something, about yourself or a decision to take? They always come back with one. And very frequently, it's a parent saying, "Yeah, I had this dream and I knew, you know, to be with this partner, or I knew it was time to get pregnant, or I knew I was pregnant with you, or it was, time to go to this university or take this job." They're very often about decisions. And so a lot of people are way more in touch with their dreaming than they realize it. They just may not have them every single night, but they do have them and they do listen to them because it's really just listening to our inside.
That sounds like a profound dream where you're given information that you're not physically cognitively aware of during your waking hours. So, for example, somebody having a dream, dreaming that they're pregnant and then uncovering that they are. What do you think we're tapping into when we are bringing back information that wasn't known during the waking part of our day?
Well, let me ask you a question right now. Can you see
Okay.
the back of your head?
No,
It's still there though, isn't it?
of course.
Yeah. So all day long, we're busy. You're busy talking to me right now. But your inside is like the back of your head and it has its whole thing going on. It's like getting some ideas from this conversation. It's feeling what resonates and what doesn't. It's maybe having some kind of emotional reaction like, oh, that's making me feel expanded, or oh, I have a question about that. All these things are happening inside of ourselves, but we're not paying attention because you're thankfully paying attention to our conversation and asking great questions. So when we go to sleep at night, that thinking stuff quiets. And all of this information that's been going on all day long is able to finally talk to us. It gets our attention.
Well, what's going on when we have a dream and we're given information that we couldn't have possibly known, and it's actually corroborated by somebody else in the waking hour after having the dream? Because I had that happen to me. I actually wrote about that in my book because it was such a profound thing when it happened.
Well, we're all connected. So, I can tell you, for example, that it's a windy day, even though I am not the wind and I can't see the wind, but the wind is pushing on my skin and it's clear that it's a windy day. So when we think about, where there's all these different things that we experience that we sort of write off as just that's normal. But if you really think about that, we're saying that we have a physical sensation to something that is invisible to the eye. In that same way, we can pick up things that are vibrating in a certain way in the world, and we can hear what's happening to these things in the world from time to time, even if we're not in the same location of it.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, of course. I mean, it's more understandable, I guess, when it's something in my waking hour, and because I can say, "Oh, that's my intuition that connected to it."
It's no different. We call it intuition in the daytime, and we call
Yeah,
it a premonition or premonitory dream in the dreaming time. It's the same thing.
same thing. Well, I would imagine that people who are watching right now are excited about what you do. Maybe they want to, like you, work with people for helping them understand and interpret their dreams. So tell us a little bit more about the Institute, how people can work with you, and where they can find your book.
Yeah. So it's called the International Institute for Dreaming and Imagery, and you can just search for it. It's instituteforDreamingandImagery.com. And we have online classes, and they're all throughout the year. Many of our people do one-on-one work. We have the program for young people. We have different artistic programs and leadership programs as well. So you can find that online. We're on Instagram, Dream with IIDI. And the book is called The Secret Mind, and you can find that on Amazon. You can find it at bookshop.org. And there's a tab of that on the Institute, or you can go to bonniebuckner.com and find it.
Wonderful. I'll put everything in the show notes. Well, Bonnie, this has been super fun talking to you. We both talked about how we have the same goal. We want to wake people up to the power of who they are. So thank you so much for sharing the power of our dreams so that people can understand it more and take this information and apply it to make their lives better. Thank you for what you're doing to help wake up the collective. It's so needed right now.
Thank you for having me. And really, it's thrilling that I'm your first dream person, and it's surprising. I would think you'd have many dream people. So
Well, maybe you'll get a
thank you.
flood of them now, but thank you for coming on. And of course, this show is absolutely nothing without all of you who tune in to watch and to share these with people who need to hear it. So thank you, everybody, for watching.
Thank you.
This channel's for seekers, for hearts who remember there's something more. Subscribe to join the awakening.